wanted to start by acknowledging that we live and work in the traditional territory of the Michi-Sagig and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the William Treaties First Nations, and also within the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin First Nations. And I was thinking, as I was driving here this evening, the role that our landscape plays in our community is so huge. You know, it really, we have such a sense of pride of place here in Haliburton. And when I think about the theme for this evening and how communities and municipalities work together, often it's the land that is helping us with what those priorities need to be, whether it's roadways or animal ways or waterways. It really tends to dictate what's important in our community. And so I want to acknowledge that as we begin this discourse today. When this project came forward through the HCDC Local Initiatives Program, there was unanimous support. The idea of educating our community about how to get involved and make positive change really resonated with our Community Economic Development Committee. And I'm really pleased to be here this evening. Tonight is the first of a 4-part series focusing on partnership and action, how communities can work with municipal government to inspire successful projects that benefit our community. This series is supported by the Haliburton County Development Corporation, Canoe FM, the Haliburton County Community Cooperative through the Telling Our Stories speaker series, and Jen Design through her work on our website. This series is the brainchild of the Haliburton Highlands Healthy Democracy Project. This project is a community-led initiative aiming to strengthen civic participation, support local leadership, and support the democracy in our community. Important to note that this project is about looking forward to ensure that a strong local tradition of effective municipal councils and democratic participation in our community continues. You will hear more about the team behind the scenes as we get further into the presentation. We will have time after to mingle and discuss the information, but we're not including a formal Q&A this evening. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jessica Slade, our speaker for this evening. Jessica is the founder of Civics with Slade, which is a nonpartisan civic engagement initiative focused on making politics more accessible for youth, women, and rural communities. Please join me in welcoming Jessica.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for that introduction, Heather. Thank you also to all of you for being here tonight. Now, I'm looking around and I noticed a really mixed audience in the room. Some of you are current or former counselors who have lived this work every day. Some of you are staff who know how complex the municipal government can be, and others are young people or residents who are just curious about how things work. Tonight is about putting us all on the same page and creating shared conversation, because when we all understand how government works and community works with it, it makes us stronger, and we're so happy that you're here. As Heather mentioned, my name is Jessica Slade, and I've been a part of the Haliburton community for most of my life. Some of you might know me from my family's local business, McKee Security, or maybe you've read my Plain Talk Politics column in the paper. And if not, that's also totally fine. One of the beautiful things about living in a small town is that we'll all get to know each other eventually. Tonight, I'm here wearing a different hat. As the founder of Civics with Slade, which is an initiative that I started to make politics more accessible, especially for youth, women, and rural communities. I launched it just before the last provincial and federal election to help demystify the political process. People started messaging me and telling me things like they finally felt understood in politics and that it felt clear to them and relevant in terms of how they should vote or what ways and what things they should care about. This was especially interesting to me because in only the first month of operation, we received 90,000 views. To me, this signals a big gap in the way that we have conversations about democracy and in civic engagement. That is a big part of the reason why I'm so excited to be a part of the Haliburton Highlands Healthy Democracy Project. Because democracy, local democracy, is where these concepts really hit home. Now, Tonight is about setting the stage for all of us. We'll walk through how local government works, why it matters here in Haliburton, what roles are up for election in 2026, and how our local community can play a bigger role. We'll highlight some local success stories to show how much can be accomplished when we all work together. So, to begin, I'd like to start with a big picture reality. Voter turnout in Ontario's 2022 municipal election was the lowest ever recorded, with 33% of eligible voters casting a ballot. That is a huge drop and a trend that we really need to talk about. Another trend that we're seeing is the rise in acclamations. In 2022, 32 full councils across Ontario were acclaimed and 553 positions were uncontested. This means that nobody ran against them. Acclamation in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean that fewer choices are available and there's less engagement overall. So, what do these trends and others have to do with the Haliburton Highlands Healthy Democracy Project? It's kind of why we started it. This project isn't just about encouraging people to run for council, though. It's also about strengthening civic participation in all of its forms. We want to support local leadership, celebrate successful community collaborations, and give residents the tools they need to shape the future of our county, building on the great work that's already happening. In other words, there are many ways to make a difference beyond just becoming a councillor, and we're here to empower all of those paths. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our fantastic steering committee. And as I say each name, maybe you could either stand up or wave, just so folks around the room can see who you are. First, we have Barry Martin. Barry is a community enabler, award-winning entrepreneur, and active volunteer committed to giving back to a community that has given so much to him. Next, we have Lauren Hunter, who is a self-proclaimed political nerd with 15 years experience in campaigns, public affairs, strategic communications, and the nonprofit and public sectors. Next is Carol Moffat, a community volunteer and collaborator, an award-winning heritage champion, 16 years on local council, including 12 years as mayor and 2 terms as county warden. We also have Sean Pennylegion, a retired professional from Haliburton Forest, now focused on a full and rewarding volunteer schedule and a variety of community initiatives. And of course, there's also me, Jessica Slade. At the heart of it, we're just a group of Haliburton County locals who believe in community connection, accessible information, and the idea that democracy works best when everyone feels invited to participate. All right, so as Heather mentioned, we're going to be using a tool tonight called Mentimeter. What's really cool about this tool is it's an audience polling tool that uses your information in real time to kind of show us the vibe of the room. So don't be intimidated. If you have a phone, please take it out. You'll see that on the slide, there's both a website link and a QR code, so you can access it through either. You can either go to menti.com and type in the code 43489359, or you can open your phone's camera and zoom in on this QR code, and it should open a link into Google Chrome or whatever browser you use, I suppose. Once you enter the code into the screen, you're going to be connected for the entire session, so you won't need to log in again for each question. But if you do need the code later on, don't worry, it's going to stay at the very top of the screen throughout the presentation. I also just want to say, for my hesitant friends in the audience, you don't need to create an account or anything. We're not stealing your personal information. It's super simple and everything is fully anonymous. We're not going to sell your data or spam you with fake Costco coupons. So go ahead, open your browsers, and please join us at menti.com. So the first question, just to get a little pulse check, there's actually a couple here. So how confident are you in your understanding of how local government works? How interested are you in getting involved in your community? And how excited are you about being here today? So the left is not at all, and the right is very. Wow, this is super impressive. I feel like people are very happy to be here, very understanding of how government works. Perfect. Amazing. Thanks so much for helping us get started. Keep your phones handy because, as I mentioned, we're going to have a few more questions throughout the night. And you're also going to be able to view the slides on your phone as well. So if there's something that you can't see and you want to zoom in on, or you want to take a screenshot of it for later, the Mentimeter app that you're in right now will be following the presentation in real time. So now that we've warmed up a bit, let's dive into tonight's session, understanding how government works. We know that government can sometimes feel like a big, complicated web of responsibilities spread across municipal, provincial, and federal levels. And yes, there's often a bit of overlap and some gray areas too in terms of who does what. But for tonight, we're going to zero in on the municipal level. With the 2026 municipal election on the horizon, it's important for all of us to have a clear picture of what local government actually is responsible for and how it impacts our daily lives. So when we think about government, we often jump straight to federal and provincial issues, things like healthcare, national policy, but at the municipal level, this is at the closest to home. It's where decisions are made that directly impact our daily life, sometimes in ways you may not even realize. Now, as I mentioned, there's definitely some gray areas and overlaps, and not every municipality in Ontario handles the exact same things. But here, municipal governments are responsible for libraries, recreation facilities, local roads, waste management, and so much more. These may seem like small things, but they have a huge impact on our quality of life. And the fewer people who step forward to be part of these decisions, the narrower those conversations get. So as we walk through the session tonight, remember that municipal government is really where your voice can have a direct impact. Now that we've got a bit of a general sense of what municipal governments handle, I think it's important to talk about the Municipal Act itself. Let's talk about the rules they have to play by. Municipalities in Ontario can't just do whatever they like, and neither can mayors, though I feel like this is a common misconception that I hear online a lot. They operate within a set of guidelines laid out by the province called the Municipal Act. As we talk about the Municipal Act, it's worth noting that it's a very complex piece of legislation. In fact, there's over 280 sections of related regulations. Think of the Municipal Act as a bit of a sandbox that sets the parameters and boundaries for what municipalities, and by extension, mayors and councillors are allowed to do. Everything that happens at the municipal level, from the services provided to the roles of municipal staff, exists within the powers and the policies that the Act allows. In other words, the Act defines what's inside the sandbox and what's not. This ensures a clear framework and a level playing field for how municipal decisions are made. Okay, some of you might still be thinking, this is great, Jessica, but what even makes up a municipality? What makes a municipality a municipality? Well, let me tell you, there's a couple of key features that are really important. The first is a specific geographic area within boundaries. This might seem simple, but those boundaries determine who lives under the rules and services of that local government. Second is, of course, the power to tax. Third, municipalities are governed by an elected council, and these people are chosen by you and your neighbors to represent your interests, make local laws, and decide how to spend the budget. And in terms of funding, there's three main sources: property taxes, grants, and user fees. All of these pieces together create the financial backbone that lets a municipality deliver services that we rely on every day. But here's the truth. Council doesn't exist in a silo, and neither does community. The real magic happens when the two work together. Every success story we're going to share tonight has this at its heart: citizens with ideas, councils with authority, staff with expertise, and volunteers with time and energy. That's the recipe. It's not one or the other. It's a combination of community and council collaborating together to make big things happen. Our steering committee spent some time mapping out the different roles people can play in strengthening our democracy. And when we realized this, that there's not just one way to get involved, each role matters. So as you see here, there's so many options available to make change in your community. You could be a municipal councillor and become elected and have a different type of impact than if you were a school council member and a volunteer. But each of these things is equally important. They all carry different levels of responsibility, but each of them contributes to shaping the community we live in. We know that local democracy is strengthened by the people who show up in all kinds of ways, whether that's serving on a board, coaching a team, helping out at a food bank. And I'd like you to take a moment to think about yourself in this picture. What role are you already playing, and what role could you see yourself stepping into in the future? The point is, no matter your skills, schedule, or comfort level, there is a way to make an impact. So let's take a look at the many ways that people in this room are already showing up for the community. Please go ahead and grab your phones. We're going to be pros at this by the end, using the same Menti code and link, and think about the top 3 ways that you're currently involved, or maybe not, in your community. We'll take a moment to respond, and then we'll look at the results together. Amazing. So many involved people. Thanks for sharing. Whether you're on a formal committee or just lend a hand when somebody needs it, it really does all count. What this poll shows us is that community involvement takes on many forms, and it's often a combination of people working together in formal roles, through informal help, and everything in between. The chart that we just talked about earlier, we're going to bring this to life by looking at some local examples. These are stories where community members and councils work together to make real change happen. And the first one comes from Dysart et al. Heather will walk us through our first success story.
So thanks, Jess. What we now know as the Haliburton School of Art and Design was born out of a group of citizens passionate about the arts. This group started the Haliburton School of Fine Arts in 1969 with 9 courses, and subsequently reached out to various educational institutions in search of an affiliation, and Sir Sandford Fleming came to the table. As the school increased in popularity, they began using community spaces throughout Dysart, even some household garages, I hear. So there was a need to expand. And like so many things in our community, this started as a casual conversation between a staff person and the Dysart mayor, or Reeve at the time. The idea was fully supported by the Dysart Council, who donated land and contributed funding for servicing the land. A massive fundraising campaign raised $2.5 million in the community, and the province contributed another $7 million. What started as a big idea came to fruition in 2004 when the new college campus opened. There are few communities of our size that have college presence like the Haliburton School of Art and Design. We can all appreciate the role that the college has taken in fostering our arts community that has evolved to really be a definitive part of who we are here in Haliburton. This story is such an amazing example of how municipal government, not-for-profits, and individuals can work together to make things happen, and how there really is a role for everyone. Some of us want to flip a burger at the fundraiser. Some can donate labor and expertise. Others may want to sit at a board table and help make decisions. Regardless of how everyone pitches in, it really takes a community to make big dreams like this come true. And what an amazing example in our community. Connecting back to Jessica's earlier slide, this really represents that there are so many entry points to get involved in a big idea in a community like ours.
This brings us to the people who make things happen inside government itself. Local government isn't just councillors, and it isn't just staff. It's both. Elected officials, your mayor, deputy mayor, and councillors are the ones who set the direction. They listen to residents, debate priorities, and ultimately decide on what needs to be done. Municipal staff, led by the CAO, the Chief Administrative Officer, are the ones who figure out how to get it done. They bring professional expertise, design programs, and carry out the work day to day. Now, here's something important to note. The mayor and deputy mayor on the political side and the CAO on the staff side are really the bridge between these two groups. They're the ones who connect council's decisions with the municipality's operations, making sure the two sides are working together. Neither can succeed without the other. Councillors can set priorities all day long, but without staff to implement them, nothing moves. And staff can have great ideas, but without council's approval, they can't move it forward either. The magic happens when the two groups are in sync, sometimes even co-creating solutions together. Now that we've seen how elected officials and staff need each other to get things done, I'd like to zoom out on how councils themselves are set up and how local councils actually work. At the top, you have the head of council, the mayor, and the mayor represents the whole community. They chair meetings, act as a public face of the municipality, play a leadership role in setting direction. And if I'm not mistaken, we may actually have a few mayors in the audience tonight. And then if you're a councillor, councillors can be elected in two ways: at large, which means every voter in the municipality votes for every councillor, or by ward, which means the municipality is divided into smaller areas and each ward elects its own councillor to represent them. Together, the mayor and councillors form the council, which is the decision-making body for the municipality. They pass bylaws, approve budgets, and set priorities. But what's important in this example is that council is not a single person. It's a group, and decisions are made collectively. Sometimes they agree, sometimes they don't. But that's the strength of the system, is that different voices from across the municipality come together around the same table to decide what's best for the community as a whole. It's not just one or two people unilaterally making decisions. But before we go any further, it's worth talking about a few terms that you'll hear a lot leading up to the election. When someone's elected, it means they put their name on the ballot, voters had a choice, and they won. When someone is acclaimed, it means that they were the only person to put their name forward for that position and that nobody ran against them. As I mentioned earlier, acclamation isn't necessarily negative, but it does mean that there was not a choice for voters. Next, when someone is appointed, it means that they're selected by members of council rather than elected directly by the public through a vote. So now that we know how people get into these roles, I think we should talk a little bit about what happens once they're in them. What does it really mean to be on council? As a steering committee, we've talked about this a lot, and I feel like we could spend a whole lot of time here. But for this presentation tonight, we're just going to touch on it a little bit. At its core, council is about representation and decision-making. Councillors are elected to listen to their community, bring voices forward, and make decisions on behalf of the whole municipality. That work shows up in a few different ways that I have listed here. The first, and the one that I hear the most about, is listening to the community. Councillors spend a lot of time talking with residents at the grocery store, at the hockey rink, over the phone, and hearing concerns and the ideas about what's working and what's not. They also represent those ideas at council. It's not just about having your own personal opinion. The role is to take what you've heard from your ward or your community and make sure that they are part of the discussion around the council tables. They also prepare for meetings, review reports from municipal staff, create and debate on voting and bylaws, and so much more. So when you think about the role of councillor, it's largely about governance, setting direction, making decisions, and assuring accountability. And tonight, we're only scratching the surface. As I mentioned, if you're interested in what it's like to really sit on council, the daily demands, the challenges, and the rewards, we're going to be digging into this much deeper in session 3 this spring. That's when you'll hear directly from people who have this lived experience. But for now, I'd like to bring it back to you. We just talked about what the role looks like, and I'd like to take a quick pulse check. On your phones again in Mentimeter, you're going to see the next question. Have you ever considered running for local government? I'd like you to go ahead and select the option that best suits you. Yes, no, or if you just want to participate but don't want your answer counted, you can also select the little eyes emoji and you'll be included in the poll. Wow, it's shaping up to be a very interesting mix. Amazing. Thank you so much for being honest with that one. It's always interesting to see the mix in a room. Some people who have thought about it, some who haven't, some who are currently sitting on the fence, and honestly, all of those answers are valid. That's exactly why we're here, to start this conversation and explore what it means to get involved. We'd like to have a follow-up poll to this one, and we'd like to dig a little bit deeper. So now you're going to see a list of factors that can make running for municipal office more possible. Things like time, money, understanding how council works. Please go ahead and rank the items in order of most importance for you personally. This isn't about right or wrong answers. It's about understanding what would actually move the needle for more people in this room. So take a minute and then we'll look at the results again together. What I feel like is really powerful here is that we can actually see in real time what the biggest barriers or motivators are for people in this room. These things aren't abstract. They're the kinds of things that shape whether or not someone is going to decide to step forward. And so to the current council members that I've seen in this room, I'd like you to pay attention and to take note. If we want stronger, more representative local democracy, we have to make sure that these barriers are addressed and that we're creating an environment where more people feel supported and encouraged to run. So now we're going to talk what rules are up for election in 2026 and what's actually on the ballot. When we head into the next municipal election, here's what exactly is going to be on the ballot in Haliburton County. In each of our 4 lower tier municipalities, Algonquin Highlands, Dysart et al., Highlands East, and Minden Hills, voters will elect a mayor. And each municipality also has a deputy mayor. In Dysart and in Minden, the deputy mayor is elected directly. And in Algonquin Highlands and in Highlands East, the deputy mayor is appointed from among councillors. Voters will also choose their councillors throughout all of Haliburton County. Altogether, across the county, there's 18 seats. And finally, there's also 1 school board trustee representing Haliburton County at Trillium Lakelands District School Board. So when you put that all together, that's 25 elected roles across Haliburton County that will need to be filled. Next is duties and compensation, which is interesting based on how people have just responded to the last poll. We want to talk honestly about what these roles involve because transparency is important and we don't want anyone walking away with the wrong impression. Our steering committee took a stab at beginning to define the duties and compensation, and this is our current and best attempt. On paper, these jobs are listed as part-time, but in reality, the hours can vary a lot depending on the season and what's happening in the community. Mayors and deputy mayors are often working 25 to 60 hours a week. Councillors, 15 to 40 hours, trustees around 15. That includes councillor board meetings, committee meetings, preparing by reading reports and agendas, responding to emails, phone calls, or residents that you run into in the grocery store. And here's the thing, those hours aren't always predictable. During quieter months, like in the summer, there might be fewer meetings and a lighter workload. But when an ice storm hits or there's a flood or any kind of local emergency, those hours can skyrocket overnight. In those moments, councillors and mayors are often working around the clock until the situation is under control. Some of those people are even in this room today. So if you see your local councillor at the grocery store or out and about, take a second to recognize the huge amount of hours they put into these roles, often behind the scenes and far beyond what's written in their job description. I'd like to spend a moment looking at compensation. For councillors, it's usually the $21,000 to $25,000 range. Deputy mayors earn more, mayors earn the most, especially because they sit at the county council, which comes with additional remuneration. But here's the key point. People often don't do it for the money. The pay doesn't always line up with the hours or the responsibility. The real motivation is in the opportunity to shape our community. That's what we want you to begin thinking about tonight, whether or not you could see yourself in one of these roles. Maybe not today, maybe not even in 2026, but at some point in your life, is this a way that you could maybe contribute? Because every voice that steps forward makes local democracy stronger. Algonquin Highlands is a great example of what can happen when community members work together and work with council together to put ideas into action. I'm going to pass it over to Heather to share our next success story.
Thanks, Jessica. So I can't see you, but do we have any campers or canoers? I'm going to let me give a clap if you, all right, that's good. The next example will resonate with you. In the year 2000, concerned citizens raised concerns about the overuse of the Frost Center area to both the Ministry of Natural Resources and the municipality of Algonquin Highlands. And this one is near and dear to my heart. It's my backyard. So the response from that community voice, that community concern, was to engage in consultation about the issues, find out more detail about what was going on. And the municipality worked through the process of getting a land use permit from the MNR, and an agreement was reached where Algonquin Highlands would manage the registration system for camping throughout the Frost Center area. And this is really one of the crown jewels of our community. The MNR contributed $200,000 grant to help fund the creation of the Haliburton Highlands water trails. And the reservation system opened in 2006. And if you were there before and you go there now, the impact on the environment in the Frost Center area and the enjoyment of this recreational activity is profound. All of these community assets bring people to our community and have maintained natural areas. Algonquin Highlands has since gone on to manage hiking and skiing trails, and an additional have added other water trails to that system. So I think this case study demonstrates that sometimes what first appears as a problem can turn into an incredible opportunity. And it really is a way that community can bring ideas to the council table and collaborate and kind of stretch that regular mode of operations box and make great things happen that have a huge legacy for our community. So that's Algonquin Highlands.
Thank you, Heather, for sharing that inspiring example of what's possible when community and council work together. Now, let's take a moment to reflect on who's sitting at the council table and why that matters. In the most recent municipal election in Ontario, only 31% of all candidates were women. That's less than 1 in 3. We've come a long way, but there's still a lot of work to do. But that's what makes the story of Algonquin Highlands so notable. Both in 2018 and in 2022, the township elected council made up entirely of women, and that is incredibly rare. Now, some people might ask, is that representation? Should we celebrate it if it's all women, just like we'd question it if it were all men? And that's a fair question, because representation is ultimately about balance. A fully representative council should reflect the many identities, experiences, and viewpoints in community across gender, race, and more. But in my opinion, here's why Algonquin Highlands still matters. For generations, municipal councils were entirely male. When a council is entirely women, it challenges the long-standing norm and opens the door to a new way of leading. This also sends a powerful message, especially in a rural context like ours, that women do belong in leadership roles and that there's no single mold for what a counselor looks like. So while the goal isn't to replace one imbalance with another, examples like this help to shift what's seen as possible and who sees themselves reflected in local government. Now, I'd like to shift to one other important group of people who is often most overlooked. This is the youth. When we think about civic engagement, we focus on voters, candidates, and decision makers, but young people are community members too, and they're paying attention even if they're not always participating in traditional ways. In a recent national survey by Apathy is Boring, youth were asked if they believe politicians want to hear from them. In total, half of youth don't believe that they do. That is a serious disconnect. We also see this mirrored in trust levels. 47% of youth reported low trust in government, 17% said that they had no trust at all. And to me, this raises important questions that we all need to grapple with. Why don't young people feel seen and heard? And what can we do differently to build trust, not just once they turn 18, but long before that? Because the reality is that the habits and beliefs we have early in life shape whether or not we participate later on. If we want active, engaged citizens down the road, we need to start by including young people now. So how do we turn this around? This is also a picture of my daughter, by the way. The good news is that we actually know what works. Research shows that youth engagement is most effective when it follows 3 simple principles: early, authentic, and community-based. Early meaning before voting age. When young people are invited into civic spaces early, they're more likely to carry that engagement forward into adulthood. Authentic, not just a checkbox or a token role, but real, meaningful opportunities to contribute. Young people can tell when something is performative. Community-based. When youth see how local government connects their lives through things like skate parks, library programming, it becomes real for them, and that's where the spark happens. If we want to build a stronger democracy, we can't treat youth as just future voters. They are current community members, and their voices matter now. Now that we've talked about who's engaged and who's not, let's take a few minutes to explain how our local government works here in Haliburton County. Across Ontario, there are 3 main types of municipalities: a single-tier municipality, a place like Toronto is maybe a best-known example, a lower-tier municipality, which is a town or township that is a part of a lower group, and an upper-tier municipality, which is a larger body, usually a county or a region. We are part of what is called a 2-tier system, and here's what that looks like in practice. I have 2 images here. So on the left, you'll see the County of Haliburton, which is the upper tier, and on the right is the lower tier, which includes Algonquin Highlands, Dysart, Minden Hills, and Highlands East. The lower tiers handle things like waste management, local roads, bylaw enforcement, and building permits, while the county is responsible for broader services that span all 4 municipalities. I feel like this is always a bit confusing, and honestly, it's because it is. I have a master's degree in public policy, and I still find myself double-checking who's responsible for what, and I'm definitely getting it wrong still sometimes. So if you're sitting here thinking the same thing, you're not alone, and that's exactly why we're starting to have these conversations. Next, I want to draw your attention to how things looked after the last election. These are the turnout numbers from the 2022 municipal election across Haliburton County. As you can see, voter turnout ranged from just over 21% in Highlands East to 31% in Dysart et al. That means less than 3 in 10 eligible voters cast a ballot, and in some areas, that was closer to 2 in 10. These numbers raise a big question. What is stopping people from voting? If we zoom out for a moment and compare Haliburton County to the rest of the province, the average voter turnout in Haliburton County was 26.6%. And across Ontario, that average turnout was higher at around 32.9%, but even that was considered low. So the takeaway here is that municipal elections matter, but too many people are opting out. That's part of what this project is all about, helping people to understand local government, feel more connected to it, and maybe even feel inspired to participate. We've seen the numbers, and it's clear that there's a lot of room to grow when it comes to turnout and engagement in local government. But instead of just focusing on what's not working, we want to highlight what is. So now we're going to turn to our next example, this time from Highlands East, where community members and council work together to make something great happen. I'll pass it back over to Heather.
Thank you. So our third example this evening is the Central Food Network. And the CFN, as I'll refer to it, operates the Wilberforce and Cardiff food banks, the heat bank that assists folks with home heating, including hydro relief, financial assistance with propane and firewood. And they also host income tax clinics. With this example, I think it's really important to throw some numbers at you. In 2024, the Central Food Network turned $300,000 in donations into 5,200 delivered meals, 170 food hampers, distributed over 210,000 pounds of bulk and rescue food, supported 151 households with home heating, and unlocked over $800,000 in tax benefits through helping 341 folks with their tax returns. It's pretty amazing. So how did this one start? Again, community members identified an urgent need and took action. The municipality has been a strong collaborator from the beginning, providing facilities, support for hiring staff, and applying for grants. The CFN operates on both tiers of government, so they're located physically in that lower tier, but some of their programs reach the entire county. This is an example of how municipal support in one location can benefit our whole community. And CFN is playing a lead role in connecting all of the food banks and integrating those services across the county as well. I feel like this case is a little bit different from some of the others. This is an ongoing and growing need in our community. And this is a shining example of an organization that is continuing day to day to serve that need. And I will say they are looking for board members.
It's a good plug. Stories like this don't just happen on their own. They happen when people get involved. So now I'd like to walk you through some concrete ways that residents, including yourselves, can engage with council. Whether you're ready to speak up at a meeting, send an email, or just start a conversation in your neighborhood, there are multiple ways to get involved, and every action matters here, before, during, and between all of the elections. So on the screen, there's a couple of examples there. And you don't have to do all of the things that are listed. Even choosing just one is a great first step. I'd like to highlight attending a meeting. You might not know this because I didn't know this until recently, but most council meetings are open to the public, so you can watch them in person or online and get a feel for how decisions are made. I'd also like to pause here and go next to our next Mentimeter question. We can get to on the screen. Perfect. I'd like to get a sense of how often we engage with our local government. This could mean showing up at a council meeting, filling out a municipal survey, emailing your councilor, or even just chatting with them at the hockey rink or the grocery store. Anything that's a part of helping to shape the decisions made in your community. It's definitely not a test and there's no wrong answers. It's just a snapshot of where we are at as a group. This is shaping up to be an interesting balance between people who have never and then people who are quite regular. We've got 54 people responding, so I'll just give it another maybe 30 seconds. Thank you so much for responding. It's always so powerful to see the range of experiences in the room. Whether you're already deeply engaged or just starting to learn how it all works, you're definitely not alone. What this tells us is that everyone's starting point is different, and that's okay. To wrap up this section, I'd like to take a look at where we are at in the municipal council timeline. In Ontario, municipal councillors serve for a 4-year term, and we're now more than halfway through the current one, which began on October 22nd, 2022. 2023 to 2025 is what we call the implementation years. Councils are developing and passing local budgets, bylaws, capital projects, and policies, and they're also conducting community consultations to deliver services. 2025 to early 2026, this is the pre-election phase, and it's where we are at now. You'll see the little yellow marker on the slide that you are here. This is where we are. We've included this because it's now time to start thinking about the questions that you might have, conversations you might want to have, and consider the kind of council that we want to have the next time around. Council's starting to review progress, and some members are deciding whether they're going to run again. But at the same time, as a community, meaning all of us, we can start to think about who we might want to see on the ballot. Just to highlight a couple other important dates, May to August 2026, that is the nomination period for new candidates to register to run for council. Next summer and early fall, that's going to be the campaign season where we're seeing debates, platforms, and voter engagements. And then, of course, October 26, 2026, that will be the election day. The earlier we engage, the more impact we can have, whether that means encouraging someone to run, asking current councillors about their priorities, or simply staying informed as we move forward to 2026. We've talked a lot about why local government matters and how we can get involved, but I think as we've all learned tonight, the best way to understand is through real-world examples. So we're going to turn to our last and final success story of the night, this time from Minden Hills. I'll pass it back to Heather.
So our last example this evening is the Minden Riverwalk. This project was initiated by 2 community members in Minden and was quickly became a project under the banner of Friends of Minden Hills, which was made up of a municipal councillor, a staff member, individuals, and a local not-for-profit. So a really nice mix there. This group developed a master plan with the support of several different funding agencies, which involved a lot of community consultation and architectural planning. The project idea started in 2002 and was completed in 2010. Excuse me. The municipality continues to maintain the Riverwalk and do upgrades as needed. And there's participation with not-for-profit groups like the Master Gardeners, who've developed an interpretive trail for the native plants that are now growing along the shoreline with the help of students from Trent University working through the Link Center for Community-Based Research. I think we can agree that the Riverwalk has really become a walking destination in the county and continues to inspire all kinds of really cool community collaborations. This project highlights the value of that community members can bring as it spanned different councils. So sometimes when a project is longer than 4 years, that community member piece can create the continuity and keep the project on track. So if you haven't been on the Minden Riverwalk, it's a beautiful time of year to go.
Thank you again, Heather. When we look back at everything we've covered tonight, from local government and how it works, to the power of representation, to real examples of collaboration, the message is clear. Local government matters, but it only works if we are a part of it. That doesn't mean everyone has to run for council, though, but maybe some people in this room will. It means staying informed, showing up when it counts, and helping to shape the kind of community we want to live in for now and future generations. We hope that tonight has sparked some ideas, challenged a few assumptions, and maybe made local government feel a little bit more accessible. But before we close, we want to hear from you one final time, and we swear this one is a little bit fun. Let us know where you feel most at home in Haliburton County. Maybe this is where you live, where you work, or where you spend most of your time. And while you're at it, I'd like you to take a second to reflect. What's the next step that you want to take? Is it attending a council meeting, joining a local committee, talking to a neighbor about something you learned tonight? Whatever it is, we'd love to know. And we hope you stay connected with us through the Haliburton Highlands Healthy Democracy Project. But before I pass it back to Heather and close out the evening, I want to take a moment to talk about what's next. I'm going to give you a little bit more time to respond to this, though, before we go to the what's next slide. I just want to say that this is actually great representation. I wasn't sure if we would only get people from Dysart, but it's great to see that there's people across all 4 municipalities. Amazing. So we have 52 people responded. That's pretty good. Before I pass it over to Heather to close out the evening, I want to take a moment to talk about what's next for the Haliburton Highlands Healthy Democracy Project and the journey that we're inviting you to take with us. Tonight was just the beginning. As I mentioned, it's the first in a 4-part series designed to walk hand in hand with community members from where we are at now, all the way to where we might want to go, supporting or even running a successful municipal campaign. We've built this roadmap intentionally based on what we've heard from the community, that people care, but they're not always sure where to start. So we're starting here with success stories, local voices, and a clear understanding of how community and council can work together. From here, we're going to move to our next session, which is what we're calling the why session, Finding Your Why, where we'll hear from inspiring leaders, including former MPs, about what drew them into public service and how each of us can find our own reason to get involved. From there, in the spring, we'll take you behind the scenes of municipal leadership, what it's really like to serve on council, and how decisions get made. This will be followed by a final session focused on campaigns, how to run, how to help, and what makes for a strong community-oriented and community-rooted effort. Our goal is to walk with you through the full arc of civic engagement, from curiosity to confidence. Whether you're thinking of running, hoping to support someone, or here's a fly on the wall to see what community members think, we're just so happy that you're here and that this space is for you. We're glad to have you all here at the start of this project. I'm going to pass it over to Heather to tell you a little bit more about what's coming up on October 7th. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. As we both indicated at the beginning of the session, this is the first of a series of 4, and the next one is in Wilberforce on the 7th of October. And we'll be joined by former MPs Barry DeVolin and Mary Monsef to learn more about what inspired them to get involved. And the other 2 sessions, you'll have to stay tuned for the springs. We're looking for dates and moving those around the community. I just want to pause and have a look around the room. This is a really amazing turnout and a really nice, diverse age group, which is sometimes unique for our community. So congratulations for making the time to come out, everybody. Thank you. It's learning about how government works. I mean, if it wasn't Jessica, it wouldn't be dazzling, but because it was Jessica, it was dazzling. But I think, I mean, the spirit of this is that this is the first step of a much longer community conversation, and it's lovely to see the turnout. I want to thank the committee and for your time and energy and for being another example of how great things can happen in a community. And to close, I just want to make a particular shout out to Jessica, who has dedicated an absolutely enormous amount of her own volunteer time to put together tonight's presentation. So please feel free to mingle. Yeah, please feel free to mingle around, ask some questions of Jessica. She'll be at the front, and we'll see you on October 7th.